Good morning. So here we are again, those of you that have walked this journey with me out here in this beautiful space that we have called Soul Center. I'm so grateful to be here this morning. The journey that we're going to take this morning is going to give you what you need to get where you're trying to get. It's in the simplest way possible.
All right.
We're not gonna really mince words. It's like Donovan came over and spoke to me a minute ago. It's like, there's a handshake and there's a handshake, and then when you're in good shape, there's another handshake. There's extra muscles in that hand of lifting weights. I got a buddy from Ghana. His name's Nee. He's on a team that I work with. He's about 6'3", and every time I shake his hand, I'm like, oh, I'm getting in better shape just because I'm shaking his hand. I shake his hand all day. But we're going to do something really quickly, and I just want us to think about this little boy. I read an article this morning. It's sad, so let's just be honest about it. It's okay to be honest about sadness. It was about a little boy, the Daily News article, a little boy, maybe 12 years old, committed suicide. Yep. And we should honor that. And we should recognize that we live in a world where 13-year-old boys are committing suicide. And that we don't have to. That we do not have to live in a world where a 13-year-old boy decides that he must take his own life. And really, I have a lot of gratitude for him because for many things, but he left us a few nuggets. He left us enough information to understand what he was going through. He left us enough information to understand, and even in the tragedy and the trauma that a parent is going to have, or that a community is going to have, having to bury a 13-year-old child, there's some information there. And he talked about not being there for him, about bullying. And he talked about that experience. And when I was coming up, there's that kind of leathery toughness. And I say leathery toughness because I'm a fan of football. And we were talking about the idea of, like what the old school football, everything was like in the old days, back in the day. It's like everybody talks about back in the day until they start talking about the guys who played in leather helmets. Because none of those guys really have any stories to tell. When it was really hardcore, it's like, you have a version of toughness, you have a version of hardcore, but let's do that with the leather helmets, with the little cushion on the side, where you felt it all. But we always, progressively on this journey of life, had greater realizations of what is possible. Continually on this journey through the cycles of life, we mature, we get a greater understanding of things. We realize at some point in human history, while they were developing situations, that we should develop a system of irrigation so that we could water all the lands. And so there were groups and societies that eventually set those standards up. Same thing with dealing with the waste in large cities, like the human waste. We had to figure out ways to transport it out of the city because disease and infestation were coming up. And so when we have situations like this young boy in our own lives, we look at, and there are experiences that we are having that we don't have to have anymore. So we've got to figure out what those processes are going to be. We've got to figure out how do we approach the very difficult things in life and the challenges. And what came to mind for my talk then made sense when I started thinking about this young boy, because the title of the talk today is, I know you are, but what am I? And most of us have heard that phrase. And generally it's used in that idea of deflecting the bullying. So yeah, I see Donovan's wife, she's over there moving right now. I know you are, but what am I? But it's the deflecting, right? It's like almost like the boxer who's just trying, like you hit me with that, but I'm throwing it right back at you, and you still don't know who I am. And the reality is, when we're sitting alone, or when we're dealing with life, or even when we're looking at the best manifestation of what we would imagine for our life to be, there's a part of us that comes up and says, you can't do it. There's a part of us that says, that's okay for them to do. It's okay for her to say that. It's okay for him to come out of the closet and say things like that. It's okay for this person to speak about their political views. It's okay for them, but it's not okay for me. Or there'll be a part of us that as soon as you get a great idea, never mind. There's just something about the mind. There's something about the ego. And the way the ego functions is this. It doesn't want you to take any risks. It gets a lot of blame, and the ego has served humanity very well. The ego is the part of ourself that believes in self-preservation. So it's the part of us that decided, hey, it's a good idea to, learn how to create something to keep us warmer, and it discovered fire. It discovered clothing. It discovered how to stay away from, as Reverend Mike will often say, the saber-toothed tiger. It decided, that's probably not the thing that I want to draw attention to myself to. And that's self-preservation. We need that. We needed that as a species, because then once we were able to build tall walls in safety, then we could be protected from, let's say, the elements or from rival tribes and groups that were in the community that were a threat to us. However, the ego wants you to stay right there. So it gave you this way of living, and it said you must protect yourself, you must preserve yourself. And that's it. You do it at all costs. But preserving myself also doesn't want me to get my heart broken. Right? So preserving myself also doesn't want me to forgive, because I've already dealt with that, and I've already walked that journey before, and I've run into that wall before, and if I run that direction again, I'm going to run into a wall again. Because the ego won't let me live this experience now. The ego is going to force me to live it based on the previously conceived notions. Every thought that I've ever had before, or the programming that I have that I've never challenged and checked. It accepts things as they are, not as the infinite potential that is within them. In fact, I don't even want to say that it accepts things as they are. The ego accepts things as we think they are. Yeah. So let me change that around a little bit, because there's a reality that is in place, that is being expressed all the time, that we're not tapping into, that we're not available to, because we've accepted the ego's illusion or the lie that it tells us. So we're caught up in self-doubt. So the subtext to today's I Know You Are But What Am I conversation is from self-doubt to self-awareness to your true self. And so we're going to take that journey today. And so when you start talking about the self-doubt that you're dealing with, just look at yourself for a moment. Look at all of the different things that you do on a day-to-day basis. You're probably doing more today than your parents did. You probably communicate to more people in more ways through social media than any of your relatives ever could, no matter how big your family is, no matter how many phone calls your grandmother might have made in one day. My grandmother seems to be on the phone all the time, and I'm like, who are you talking to? It's not you, boy. You should have called. I'm like, all right, hi, Grandma. Yes, I'll be there Thursday. I'll turn the mattress for you, whatever you need. You think I'm kidding. That's Thursday. So you're dealing with all of these things, but we rarely do we give ourselves the awareness of what we're actually doing, around how much of a miracle we are in this life journey. We're so caught up in the self-doubt. We're so caught up on these limiting ideas. We're so caught on whatever the image of us was in high school or college, or as a parent or as a mother, as an employee, or whatever our professors or our teachers or our medical doctors might give us as a prognosis or a diagnosis. We get caught up in these identities and these ideas of ourselves. And so, I'm not, my doctor said I can't do this, and so I don't do this. But I've got a vision for something that's possible beyond that. And at no point in time do I remember that doctors are always practicing, because they cannot perfect what they do. They're always practicing, so they're always trying to figure out a way to do it. The medical profession is continuing to move into a greater realization of itself, but it's caught up in the limiting idea it has of itself. So we need people like Donovan, we need people like other health practitioners that are showing us, like, you know what? In this indigenous country, this disease does not exist. How is that possible? They don't eat like we do. They're not stagnant and sitting around the TV or the phone or like we are. There's possibilities. They walk, they spend time with each other, they touch, they have more physical contact in certain parts of the world than we do. Whatever it is. But we have to get out of these limiting ideas. And so the self-doubt that we're dealing with, let's look at our own lives. And so maybe I'm having this conversation with myself because I've dealt with this myself to a great deal. There are ideas and ways that people see me that I have a hard time processing. And they're all good. Let me say that again. People have wonderful things to say about me, and I have a hard time processing them, accepting them, and I really mean it. They're all good.
Yeah.
And okay. Sure. But I mean, so that's my self-doubt that's coming in, and I've got to figure out what that is, and so I've got to have a practice that helps me to see that.
Yes.
And so going into and developing a practice of self-awareness is so important. The unexamined life is not worth living. It's one of the few quotes that I remember in my 20s. And I learned it one day just sitting at a desk at a job that I once had, and it was just there. And it was the beginning of my realization that it's important for me to look at myself. And so mirrors are one thing, but now let's look at my patterns. Where am I spending most of my time? If I don't like the way my day begins, what am I beginning my day with? The quote and the reading from Reverend Michael is a perfect example of that. How do you begin your day? Do I wake up and I'm like, oh, I have that meeting. It's like, oh, I've got to take the kids here, or oh, I've got to go see those people again, or oh, I've got to fire somebody, or oh, I've got to eat healthier. Whatever it is, you've got to find a way to recalibrate it. And so as you become aware of your own patterns, you gain access to the pathway to transformation, right? So when I wake up in the morning, what's the first thing I do? So I don't know. So for the next week, Soul Center, here's an opportunity for you. You have a journal, you have a piece of paper, something next to the bed. When you wake up, don't move. Allow yourself to wake up and become aware of the thoughts that you think. If you have no idea right now what you are doing in the morning, that's because you have not established a pattern. You have not established a practice for yourself. And it's very easy to do. So tomorrow morning when you wake up, what is the first thing you think? Coffee.
Yeah.
Or, is it just gratitude? That's one of the best ones that I know, to wake up and then have that moment before you open your eyes. Because I'm awake, I hit the alarm, but I'm not really going to wake up yet. I'm going to keep my eyes closed. I'm kind of still asleep. And I'm just thankful. Oh, I'm thankful I can feel my fingers and my toes, and I can move around. And even if my uncle is an amputee, so he can feel the one leg that he has, and he's grateful. There's no difference. He's still a whole being having a very full life. Just celebrated, I want to say, probably his 70th birthday, so he's doing great. He lost his leg in the 70s, so he's been running and jumping and swimming with me and my cousins his whole life. So there aren't any limitations to this. So maybe then you sit up and you have your glass of water, because you drink your first glass of water every morning. Donovan's in my talk all day today, because I know that's what he would want you to do. Have your first glass of water first thing in the morning. That's what Dr. B, because that's what Dr. B tells me. That's what one of my health practitioners tells me. First thing in the morning, I've got my water. So then in the water, I can also be processing my thoughts, because there's infinite possibilities, because there's abundance in this glass, because there's wholeness, there's health in this glass. So I can become aware. But if that's not what I'm doing, when I wake up this week, I can become aware of what it is I'm doing. But here's the thing. This is a no judgment zone. That's just going to send you right back to self-doubt. You don't need to start getting caught up into, I do hate my life, or I do hate my spouse, or I do hate my children. Because people feel that way, y'all don't really hate them. You're experiencing emotion, you're dealing with your feelings, and you're having a feeling that you're not willing to process it. Because you're not willing to process, you think you hate somebody. But that's not the reality of it.
Right.
You haven't processed it. You haven't done the work to heal the wound, to deal with the things that are going on with you, so you think that person or this situation or that thing is something you hate. You don't.
Right.
No matter how many times that guy with that bad haircut says those crazy things on the news, you don't really hate him. I don't really talk about it much. I don't really talk about it much. But no matter how you really feel about him, it's not him. It's not him. It's maybe that we've allowed a society to grow and to express that allowed a person like that to have that much authority and to be able to kind of take us and wag us by the tail and sling us around and to make us feel this way. But really, you're a being of light and love and generosity and joy and wholeness and peace. And that's who you are, and anything that pulls you out of this maybe makes you angry. So maybe you hate that experience. And so maybe you develop a process and a practice so that whenever you see him, you're blessing him. Or whether you see him, I mean, not to win, let's not be confused. Maybe you'll bless his mind, that his senses will align, and that there'll be a greater balance and awareness in his concepts of life and reality and women and immigrants and the way over there, back over here. And so you have self-awareness that gives you the key, that gives you the pathway, that kind of unlocks the door. But if you're not practicing looking inward, if you're not turning on the inward gaze, if you have no idea how you really feel about it, if any of the people in your life ask you how you feel, and they're a person that you're genuinely connecting with, and really the fullness of what you have to say is good, and you kind of move on, this week, come back. And really be honest with how you feel. Because there's more than a word. Good can be a descriptor, but it's not really a feeling. You know, I'm feeling very peaceful and I'm moving with a greater balance and ease through my life. Or there were some pockets of tension that I kind of was dealing with as some people were coming to mind. And so I've been a little bit frustrated, but I know that I'm good anyway. Or whatever it is, but let's have an honest communication with the person who honestly asks us how we feel, whoever that might be. Because that way, when they get the answer, now they may not have been prepared for your authentic and honest answer, but your response is not based on them. You're going to say what you're going to say because you're being authentic and you're being honest and you're being aware of yourself. So you're not dealing with little compresses of energy that you're pocketing away in parts of your body, because all of the thoughts that we have in our mind and the feelings that we have when they're compressed and they're repressed and they're suppressed land in our body. And so that energy and those clumps that we have in us can be freed through conversation. Of course, yoga and going for a walk and energy, all those things will help as well, because they get the serotonin flowing, they get your body expanding, you get your muscles moving and your flexibility, and you can remember that you can reach your toes and all that kind of stuff. Like, oh yeah, good stuff. But you have that awareness. And so this is the path. And so on the other side of the self-doubt is the self-awareness. And the self-awareness is just like the doctors. It is a continual practice. And so one of the programs that I teach, Freedom Through a Structured Life, goes through 8 different life structures and helps you look at your ego, because it is there. The idea that we have of ourselves is there. We look at our beliefs. We look at our health. We look at our livelihood. We look at our relationships. We look at our finances and how that kind of correlates to what we are experiencing in the world. We look at our expression in community. How are we involved in community? And then we look at our spiritual practice. Not necessarily in that order. We can look at any of those 8 life structures at any point. However, the key is, how am I aware of my experience with money? So Patricia and Jessica told on our drummer today, so I'm going to tell a little bit on Patricia and Jessica. Right? You know, turnabout is fair play. And this is not really that big a deal, but it was challenging to bring forward any idea about finances to the community. And it's only because of what the world teaches us about money. You know, there are all of these ways that we've seen people utilize money in a way that we judge and we don't approve of. But seldom do we really celebrate the amazing uses of finances as money and how they've been able to change and transform the world. And seldom do we allow ourselves to be attentive to those things, except for when it's in a celebrity's hands and Oprah's setting up a school, or LeBron James is paying for school scholarships, or whatever it is. But let's be really clear. Our taxes do some amazing things. Yeah. Bridges and roads and highways and law enforcement officers that are getting extra training. Yeah.
Yes.
And fire departments who are saving houses and are putting out, all of these things, and people are building bridges that are safe and tunnels that are safe. So the money that we express and we talk about does amazing things. If you've lived more than 5 years, everybody in here is more than 5 years old, you've seen the world change. And you've seen how people have done things with money that you love and support, that makes you feel good, that celebrates the possibilities of life. And you've seen people do things with money that make you feel less than that. Yeah. So why are you focused on this? Why do we get focused on the worst idea of what somebody does with a thing, when we all know that most of the ways that money is spent in the world, it supports jobs that people need, it supports family, it supports children. You look at the beautiful art that's created by children, by women, by men, and there's so many wonderful things in this world. You look at the buildings that are built, whatever it is. You look at the schools that could be built, the programs, the pieces of paper. There are amazing things that people do with money. But why are we focused on that? So the self-awareness comes in. And so you continually enhance your practice of self-awareness in every area of life. When you are dealing with your own health, are you looking at yourself first with an awareness of how much you love yourself? Mm-hmm. Like before you look at what the scale says, before you deal with the fact that those pants don't fit anymore, before you deal with the fact that this is just not the way I physically want to be, how aware are you of your own love of yourself? You have to come to an awareness of yourself. Because if I can love myself, then I'll lovingly make better steps. I'll figure out what should be in the green drink that works for me. Because this green drink is a little bitter, this one's a little thick, this one's got a little too much, I should have filtered it a little bit better. But whatever it is, this is the green drink for me. There we go. And what about protein? And what about how I can eat or whatever? Figure out what, I'm going to try it so that it works for me. Yeah. And this dietary plan or this workout plan, no, I do not want to be in a gym for an hour. I want to be outside. I want to be in nature. Some of you guys see me on Facebook running, and I'm a little brutal on myself sometimes. I run at 12 or 1 or 2 o'clock in the day, because I grew up in Pasadena where at 3 o'clock it was hot. And so I have absolutely no problem running in the heat and running in the sun. It keeps the activation of the melanin in my skin a little bit, for my winter coat. And so there's a little difference that's going on. And I like that. But I like to be outside. A friend of mine gets up at 5 a.m. just to go for a walk. Just because it's better for her. Because she knows that at 5 a.m. in the morning, the sun's really not up yet. If you live in a rougher neighborhood, do like some of the people in my neighborhood, take a stick with you. Go for a walk. Tell them it's your walking stick if they ask. If you got any other questions, it's listen and answer and I'll show you. But you have this awareness, and that leads you to who you really are. Every moment of self-awareness leads you to your true self. Every time that you realize that you identify yourself more as your gender than a divine emanation of God, then you realize that you're coming to a greater awareness of yourself. Anytime you identify yourself more by your dietary and nutrition plan, by your religious practice or belief, anytime that you identify yourself by these things as the primary way that you are in the world, a mother, a father, a parent, a CEO, a CFO, when you're introducing yourself to people, think about kind of sometimes how you introduce yourself to people, especially when it's not at a meeting, when you're not at a work environment. You are a doctor, but your name's Phil. Yeah. Your name's Phil. Just be Phil today. Be the being in the world that's Phil. Yeah. And allow yourself to be simply that. Just be aware of who you are. And also allow yourself to love all of those labels that you have for yourself. And as you become aware of all the labels of your gender, of your sexuality, of your financial situation, because some of us judge ourselves by our economic situation, however you become aware of those things, look and see if any of them are lacking a love and a peace and a harmony, a balance within your awareness, because that's the way you get through. And if you're over here focusing on how you see yourself, how you are in the world, if you're focused on the truth of your being, there's no time for the place where we began with self-doubt. There's no worrying about the I know you are, but what am I? I don't have to worry about you, and I'm not even talking to you, but even when I'm working, wrestling with my ego, and ego is saying these things to me, and I respond to ego, I know you are, but I'm the divine emanation of God. I know you are, but I'm the peace which passes all understanding. I know you are, but I'm health and wholeness, balance and order. I know you are, but I am the strength of 1,000 cattle. I know you are, but I am the beauty that is on every sunrise. I know you are, but I am the grace of the flying geese in the morning. Whatever I need to be, I can be all of those things because I've come to a greater realization of who I am. I've allowed self-doubt and unbelief to fade away because I have a practice and a living way of being that allows me to see the truth of who I am. So we're going to take a trip just for a moment. And I'm just going to speak a blessing over the word and just over your hearing. And then we'll move into our time of celebration and offering for this community. So it's good to have been together this morning. It's good to have had this word. And I just want to just take this moment to bless the word. To bless the word and how it lands. To bless the seed and the soil within your own hearts. I know absolutely that this word is a word of life. And that is a word of truth. And so I speak even in this now moment to every condition and every experience and every expression that is here under the sound of my voice. Healing is in this place. Wholeness is in this place. Mind, body, and spirit. A strength in the cartilage of the body. An expansion of the lung capacity. A healing of self-identity and awareness of the truth of who I am. Oh, how grateful I am for the word of life and this truth, and to recognize our absolute oneness with it, and to speak a blessing upon us, to speak a blessing of love, beyond conditions, beyond limiting ideas, beyond any idea that we might have had. Love as all, in all, through all, is all. Love is the answer. It is the question. It is so now. And so even as I speak this word, I bless anyone that is on our hearts that we may be concerned about. If there is any person who you've been praying for or you're concerned about, speak their name into this atmosphere now. Lissa, Janetta. Now say your own name, Jason. And so we accept this reality for our own lives. We accept the reality of an expanded living, of more than enough, of all needs met, of wholeness, perfection, of power, that we have the power and authority of our own lives at one with God, at one with Spirit, at one with the truth of all existence, at one with the author and the finisher. This is the reality now. In absolute agreement with this word, we allow it to be by simply saying, and so it is. Amen. 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 Ashe. So we're just going to invite the ushers to take their place, and this is our time of conscious giving. So if you're a part of the Soul Center community, or if you're a visitor here, we absolutely know that this place is supported by our giving, by our love. And that the establishment of this place and allowing us to have this sacred place to come together comes at a financial cost. But we have become clearly aware that there's a better way to look at finances on today. And we think about the goodness of the word that we received on this morning. And we think about how the children in the children's ministry today are being loved and nurtured and cared for. And so we celebrate this opportunity, and we also celebrate the opportunity that has been presented earlier for our matching gift. So as our ushers begin the collection, with that in mind, let's go forth. Come sing a little something, Charles.